this episode of After Hours Ag. We have a very special guest with us. His name is Keath Borchert. This is very much so in the same vein as Welcome to My Farm. We're going to learn a lot about Keath here. Keath has some very fun stories that I haven't heard yet. Madison has known him for
a long time. I don't even know. How long has it been, Keith? I mean, we started singing the same Christmas cantata there in Wapbreck. That was a long time ago, but you know, as soon as the first year I started this, I saw something special in Keith.
Well, it may have been some of Madison's theater experiences in high school.
Putting on theater and choir.
And as you probably know, he's got an excellent singing voice.
Well, I haven't shared that
what's
quite
funny
yet.
Is, actually, I have not heard his singing voice, but I realized after him being here, he knew my sister. So my sister that is, what should be 14 years younger than I am, they actually sang in the same choir at MSUM. And then I found out that he also knew my cousin down in Wapton, my cousin Jeremiah. So
we sang in the same, so his sister, we sang at MSUM when I moved up there to do my broadcast journalism and video stuff. Okay. And then Jeremiah, cousin, right? Cousin, saying we were in the same choir at NDSCS, so I'm sure you saw, didn't know him, but saw Jeremiah performing with us.
Saw him all.
I thought this would be a good opportunity. I've always wanted to have more of an in-depth conversation with Keith and really get to know like his experience and what he's been through and all he's seen. I think it's Cindy, his wife, is in the corner. I'm sure there'll be some dirty looks or, hey, bring this up. But happy to have you here, Keith.
Well, why don't I break the ice here?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Keath Borchert. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad it was kind of an experience that I wasn't really anticipating, but here I am, and this will be fun. I'm a fourth-generation North Dakotan. Both my grandfather and great-grandfather homesteaded in west central North Dakota in Sheridan County. And my grandfather used to say we grow 3 crops here: rocks, thistles, and hailstones. But they raise cattle and wheat, of course. I'm married to my wife, Cindy, and who is sitting in the corner to my left. We've been married 50 years, 7 months, and 24 days. She's laughing. I do quite a bit of singing. I do solo work. I sing in a gospel quartet, and I have sung in large groups. I sang in a professional a cappella group called Dakota Harmony for 20 years, and we disbanded now, but we did things all over the territory. I was an educator for 32 years, a public school teacher and also a higher education administrator. If I had to do it over, I would have stayed in the classroom, but that's another story. I've worked on farms and ranches, predominantly ranches from the Badlands of western North Dakota to the Cheyenne National Grasslands, right here in Richland and Ransom County. I mostly on horseback. I rodeo professionally for 8 years. I've done marathons. I've done triathlons. I once rode a horse into the front door of a bar on a bet, swung around the pool table, and right out the same door. Back in the day. All right. I've broken 10 bones, including my back. My friends think I'm tougher than woodpecker lips. My wife thinks I push the envelope a bit. I'm closer to 80 than I am to 70. I do a little bit of cowboy poetry. And that's a niche that I picked up with working with numerous ranch hands over the years, and also some of the stories that I have heard and also some of the things that I've encountered.
So
entered into these stories.
Adam had heard of Cowboy Poetry, but had never maybe like really listened to it. So I told him to not look it up and be surprised when you share a couple of them with us today, because it's a different thing, especially. So I'm excited to see his reaction to a couple of these.
Good. Outstanding. Yeah. So that's kind of where I brought what brings me here, those kinds of experiences. But I've done a lot of things, and most of what I would probably do over if I had that opportunity. I have two girls, one who is a teacher in Fargo, and my wife Cindy was a teacher in Wapton, taught math for 40 years. And we're very proud of that, because she has been elected a couple of years ago to the Alumni Foundation Public School in Wapton Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
She's a Hall of Famer.
She is a Hall of Famer. So, and my oldest daughter teaches again here in Fargo. She has two daughters, and my youngest is a graphic designer and marketer.
Oh, wow.
In a firm in Durango, Colorado. And her husband lived high in the mountains, in the San Juan Mountains, kind of off the grid. And they're living their dream. So there you are.
One of my first questions would be, what are your earliest memories of life on the farm?
I had an uncle who raised cattle, horses, and he was a farrier, horseshoer in southern Minnesota. And I would spend, when I was a little guy, all the way, for a number of years, number of summers, I would spend my summers on that operation, and $50 a month in room and board.
At that time, it probably probably felt like a lot.
I was in the pink. I tell you what, that was something. It didn't go anywhere to spend any money, so I got fed real well. I remember that. But not only that, we worked with livestock all the time. That's what we did, and it's very difficult in these days. I still work part time in a cattle operation on a ranch currently, but you just can't find anybody that works in that arena anymore to bring in to help. And I got to think it's somewhat the same way all over, because it's not for the meek. I say that kindly.
Yeah. So were you living on a farm then? So you said you grew up in Sheridan County, is that right?
No. My parents did. My dad did. And my grandfather, and I didn't know my great grandfather. He had passed away before I was born. But my parents, my dad, and I remember when I was a little guy when the power and water came in.
Wow.
Yeah. I grew up without television. Not that there wasn't, and that doesn't make me that ancient. But it's just the fact that my parents didn't choose to have a television, and oftentimes we would go down the road to watch somebody else's TV. But I tell that look at where we've come from in those days to now, with all the electronics. And but I grew up without television. I can remember picking up the phone and asking the operator, giving her the operator the number, and to connect me with 567.
Yeah. So you talked about going to your uncle's horse
and cattle operation.
Okay.
And they raised show horses, is what they did in those years.
Yeah. How old were you when you started going there? Maybe for the more of the summer.
Probably Probably about 10, I would say.
And did you have brothers and sisters or anything that?
I have a sister who's 6 years younger than I am.
Okay.
So I was, in high school and college prior to, before she finished that phase, I was essentially gone. So, but yeah, so that's kind of my start, and I spent some time in Dunn County, north of Richardson, along the Knife River, on a couple of different operations there. But we worked mostly horseback on a 16-section Badlands pasture. So we did some ticklish things. I guess say that kindly. But,
yeah. So you graduated from where then?
I graduated from high school from Wahpeton.
Okay, graduated from high school.
Yeah, from Wahpeton. Educational background. I went to State College, or went to State School of Science for 2 years. Transferred to UND. Got a degree in social studies. I coached and taught in Grand Forks, North Dakota, for 1 year. And then I got a call to come back to the college and work in the admissions area, and ended up directing the admissions program there for 32 years.
Okay.
And in between times, I always worked, I guess you could call it part-time, and sometimes it felt like it was full-time, but always worked part-time on a cattle operation, on a ranch and farm. Did my master's work at NDSU. So I'm somewhat unique in that respect. I guess my heart and my soul has always been around livestock, and which is rare.
Yeah. So out of college you went to NDSCS, then you went to UND, finished your teaching degree in social studies.
Yep.
Worked for 1 year, and that in the Grand Forks School District.
Right.
Yep. Coach, what did you coach?
Wrestling, football and wrestling.
Okay. Football and wrestling. So, right. So I have actually never wrestled in that way. I was always a basketball player growing up.
I can tell you what I know about basketball. You can write on the back of a postage stamp. So, but a couple of things that people are surprised to hear about me is that I play the harmonica. I was a certified hockey official.
Even though you never played?
I played hockey, when I was little, but I developed a flair for skating. And I have done pulpit supply.
Okay. In what denomination?
Lutheran.
Okay.
Wow.
Very interesting.
I had no idea on any of those things.
Yeah.
You're a regular Renaissance man. Wouldn't you say that? You've tried a little bit of everything.
That's a pretty big word for me.
I was also interested in, I think you shared a story with me around the kitchen table that other time I was out at your house about a time when I think you headed out on I think that maybe there was a lost calf or something. You hit a blizzard. If you want to share that one, that'd be.
Well, I have that. A lot of what this is cowboy poetry stuff. Is it has rhyme and it has rhythm, like any poem, but it also tells a story, and that story is generally has been shared with the poet, the storyteller, and so much of these poems have been experienced by the author in some way of form. And I brought some along, and the one you're talking about, it's about half true.
Yeah,
I guess
I also wanted to know what are some stories of when you were cowboying, whether that be
Okay.
I'd be interested to hear a couple of experiences on
when we
horseback, maybe.
When I worked up at you refer to the Badlands as the breaks. That's what we referred, and we were housed in Dunn Center, North Dakota, which is a little town in the middle of Dunn County, Dunn Center. Mm-hmm. Okay, not too far from Killdeer. And the family that I was with had ranched a 16-section Badlands pasture. And to get to that pasture, we had to go through 14 gates. And in those years, the pickups didn't have back seats. I mean, you squeezed everything that you had into the front seat. So it was almost an arm wrestle to see who was going to sit in the middle of the front seat so you didn't have to get out and open up those gates. Now, once you got up to the gate, we were always told, because there was always grass growing around those posts, watch out for snakes, rattlesnakes, because they are there. Okay. So you're always kind of looking over your shoulder, at least I was. So if I heard a grasshopper or one of those locust kinds of things, I was melting about that time. But we rode, we checked cattle up there probably at least once, sometimes twice a week. And we had to. There's two ways you could get there: from the south through the 14 gates, or you could drive up through Killdeer and come in through the Little Missouri State Park. And so there was two ways, depending on what part of the pasture we wanted to take a look at. And you'd be looking for cows with hoof rot, cattle with pink eye, those kinds of things. And you couldn't just get one down. You had to bring cattle are gregarious. They're herd bound, so you'd have to bring 6, 7 head down to get to the one down to the working corrals that were located on this. So there were two of us, and we one morning it was kind of a cool morning. Riding down this really steep trail, and on the left there was a sheer wall on your left, a big clay wall, and on your right there was a probably I'd say 30 to 50 foot drop off, and the trail was about 18 inches wide, and I was out in front and. And I in the middle of this trail, and Gilman, the guy I was with, was in the back, and all of a sudden he pulls up his horse. I could hear him pull it up, and we were sliding down this slide because it was so steep. And he pulls up and he said, "Watch it." I don't know what. And here. We had just walked over a rattlesnake that was sunning himself in the middle of that trail. Yeah. And and the horse, and of course the rattlesnake started to rattle. I was right over the top of it. The horse went straight up. And you only had one way to go, and that was either frontwards or backwards or off to the side, and I didn't want to go off to the side. I got over that. Or none of us got bit. Well, Gilman was quite a cowboy, so he jumps off his horse and he beats that snake with a lariat. I'd never seen that before. And right in the middle of this trail. And that was kind of hair-raising. I have the rattles at home from that experience. Yeah.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Did you, in that instance, did you fall from your horse then?
No, I didn't. I stayed on my horse, but
okay.
I grabbed everything I could grab. Yeah. That was pretty hairy. I have a total respect for rattlesnakes. I really do. I just it's a fear, maybe a phobia. I don't know.
Did you ever get bit?
No.
Did anybody in your crews ever get bit?
No.
Oh.
And those guys, they were just worry about this stuff. They get out with their grab a rope off their saddle and beat it to death. That's what they did.
So you when you're out on these trails and stuff, so you said you've been married for 50 years now.
Yeah.
50 years, what did I see? 7 months and
Do the
24
math.
days.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
And you're not quite 80 yet.
Right.
So it would sound like a lot of this ranching and cowboying and things like that happened while you were married.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, you weren't just some single guy out there doing
I wasn't
stuff.
just one. No. She would often, there was one time when she was quite pregnant.
One time. I thought you had two
Yeah,
kids. I thought you had
and,
two kids.
They would bring lunch up to the breaks for us and wait for us up there until we got finished. But yeah, I have some pictures with her. She's rather pregnant. And remember those days, hot. I tell you what. But at the same time, the other day we pregnancy tested a bunch of cows, and then made bull calves into steers. And people don't realize that this takes place, and you do it year round. You don't just wait for the nice 70-degree no wind day. Last year it was 14 below, and the snow was blowing horizontally. I mean, it's not. It's not for the meek.
One of my hopes with this podcast is that people from outside of our region will listen to it, and I think that somebody who doesn't get snow, I mean, even farmers and ranchers from the southern states, they probably don't quite understand what, or they probably don't grasp the concept of snow blowing sideways. Madison was talking about a story that he was kind of alluding to it, where you were out in snowstorms and things like that. How much, so you were working in admissions and you worked there for 32 years, I think you said. How did you end up out there during those times when it was snowing and stuff? Because you would think that most of the school stuff is happening between August and
vacations.
Okay.
Weekends, and I, after so many years working for working for the state as such, you accrued a lot of vacation time. And so I would take my vacation and go work somewhere else, not go to some tropical shore as such, and go work for someone else. But I recall a story, and this moves right into one of the poems. But we were working the Cheyenne National Grasslands pasture, and it was rounding up. It was in the fall. It was in November, and we chased everything horseback. I mean, we would chase cow-calf pairs to the pasture in the spring and bring them home that way in the fall, instead of using trucks and trailers. And the big trucks and trailers couldn't get into these units anyway, because the gates in the pastures were so small. So anyway, so we were up there, and we had brought the cows and calves home from the pasture. Probably second week November. Government tells you when you gotta not only rotate, but when you can go on in the spring, when you got to come off in the fall. All right. But we were missing 3 bulls. And both of us, there was 2 of us, and both of us kind of thought that we would have, those bulls, as the weather would deteriorate, those bulls would come down to the working pens, where they'd actually smell where the rest of the cattle had gone. So we went up there, and we trailered up there. Had 2 horses, and worked all day in that pasture. And it was big pastures, and couldn't find those bulls. And we got to thinking, well, maybe they wandered off into somebody else's unit or block, or got in somebody else's trailer, which does still happen. And we finally found him, way in the northwest corner of the pasture from where we had parked our trailer by the working girls. And the weather started to go south on us. It started to sleet, cold, wind. We got the bulls down. And if you ever trailed bulls, you kind of take their pace. And so it was slow. So we got down there, and it was snowing really, really bad. Well, Eric, the guy I was with, he said, I got enough room in this trailer for those bulls and my horse. I'm going to take this home. You get on the trail and start going out. I'll leave your gates open. I'm going to take these home. I'll come back and get you. Head to the Woodbury Ranch. That was the closest ranch up in the grasslands out here. Well, after he left, I could, the weather really, really turned on us, and it cold. Oh my goodness gracious! And I had a great big rope horse that I was riding. One of the horses that I team roped professionally. A big, strong, stout horse. And got on that trail out, and got to the point where it was snowing and sleeting so bad my eyes couldn't see. Eyes were frozen shut. Horses were just caked with ice. But we got. I don't know how long it took us. I could finally see the lights of the Woodbury place, and he had stopped and told them I was on my way, so they were waiting for me in the yard. And I couldn't even get off that horse. I was just froze. And I was more concerned about getting that horse inside and getting the ice off and get it in the barn. So a couple of their boys took the horse and they peeled me off, put me in the house, gave me something warm to drink. I don't even remember what it was. And then and we were about 8 to 10 miles from where Eric had taken the bulls and his horse home and then made the round trip to come back and get me. It took him about an hour to get back there. Finally, he pulls in the yard, and we got home. I don't know if I didn't, I think I stayed at the ranch that night, but that was a close call. I can understand how people, if they're not, luckily I had a horse that just plowed right through stuff and kind of knew where he was going. So that got a little hairy. So
about what year do you think that was that was that experience?
Probably in the 80s, late 80s, I suppose.
Yeah. Before the days of smartphones and knowing what the weather.
Oh, there weren't any
such
thing as smartphones. No.
Probably before Madison and I were even born.
Yeah,
so.
for sure.
Yeah, so
I'm often asked, what you do is it really close to that TV show, The Yellowstone? I said, no, we don't live in a bunkhouse. We don't drink like there's no tomorrow, and we watch our language and that kind of thing, and it's not portrayed as everything being 75 degrees and no wind, and the climate is beautiful. I mean, you still somebody's still got to feed, somebody's still got a doctor, somebody's still got to work cattle, is what it's called. Everything gets vaccinated, dehorned, castrated, implanted, poured for worms, external and internal parasites. So, and you do that year round. You just don't wait until you get the perfect day.
Right. I think a misconception about North Dakota, when you watch those Yellowstone or any kind of movie or TV show like that, we have this saying in North Dakota where it goes something like, "Oh, you don't like the weather? Just wait 15 minutes." Yeah. Because I'm sure you've seen way more weather things than I have, but there was one day where I think it would drop 60 degrees in a day. Yeah. 80 degrees in a day, where we'll go from positive 50 to negative 30 in a day. Where I've seen those days, and I'm a fair bit younger than you, but I think that your story about making it home, I think that what gets lost on a lot of people is that ability to just say, well, we're just going to keep going. We know roughly where we got to go and put our head down and we got to get going.
In the early 2000s, then I went to work full time on a ranch near McLeod. Okay, two of us fed 1,800 feeder cattle. We fed about 600 stock cows that were going to have calves. We had 36 bulls, two of us. So we fed and fixed and treated. That's all we did. And of course, you had government grazing up there. So, but that wasn't. That it's in itself is an experience because we were working cattle all the time. But yeah,
talk about plowing ahead. Your horse knew the way to go. Your relationships with the horses over your career, I would imagine that you've had some good ones.
I've had some, I had some good ones, and I'm thinking, going back and thinking about that, you remember the good ones, you kind of forget about the bad ones, and I've had a couple of bad ones. It's, but some of the guys would say, these horses aren't pets; they're like tractors. They're here to be used, not just to look at and be fed. And so, and we did. We used horses. We used horses year round. When I roped, when I team roped, we roped. We roped year round. Indoors in the winter, of course. And but that was another experience that at least I could say I did it. And I roped professionally, rodeo professionally for about 8 years. I made money one of those 8. So it's an addiction. If you ask any team roper, it's like drugs. It's just you can't get enough of it.
I've known a few amateur bull riders in the past, and you talk to them about why do you do it? Why do you keep going out there? That's exactly what it is. They're like, oh yeah, I just got cut by the horn this last week. Look at this big gash, and I'm like, yeah. Did you win anything? Did you get any? No, but oh man, it was great. So was roping the only thing you did then in the rodeo?
I didn't ride broncs. No, I didn't ride bulls. I didn't steer wrestle. I didn't tie down calves. But just roped.
What age range were you those 8 years? About how old were you when you started?
Oh goodness, it was that was in the 80s, 90s. I guess I team penned prior to that, and which is an activity that you do on horses with cattle. And ended up second. I guess the team that I ended up second 1 year in the state, but I quit roping in about 2007, I think, 2006, 2007. So it hadn't been that long ago. So it's even hard for me to watch. My good friends, the friends that I could, are all, basically from that same interest area, rodeo guys. And so we kind of gravitate to that. I've got relations that raise barrel horses and train barrel racing horses and travel all over the country with them. So it's high school rodeo, and we've got a goddaughter and her sister that are very involved with high school rodeos, and that's from a family in Dunn County.
Have you ever done any like coaching or anything of other ropers? No, that hasn't been something.
No, some of we give little hints, but I was there's sometimes I really struggled too. So, but did broke this finger roping. That's the only thing got it caught. That was hanging somewhere else where it shouldn't be one day. So,
yeah,
I straightened it out. Then I broke my finger. Remember that one? Yeah.
I also wanted to bring up right now. I'm watching Ken Burns' latest documentary. It's about the American buffalo bison.
Yep.
It was on PBS.
Saw it.
And I wanted to ask if you had any experience with bison at all? Seeing buffalo?
You trail them, you herd them, you move them in the way that they want to go.
They're in charge.
They are in charge. Yeah.
So did you?
No, and I really. I've never had an occasion to. I've often wondered what it would be like to move. And they move those buffalo down at in the Black Hills every year. Big operation. Move some buffalo in the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. But they'll use helicopters and everything else to get them where they want them to go. But
something I think I shared with you, Adam, about at one point in the Great Plains area from Alaska down to Texas, there was over 60 million bison.
Right.
And at the time, 18, whatever that is, probably around 1890, it was down to 250 individuals. Yeah. And so it's kind of crazy how that animal is still around, and we made through conservation have let them come back. I think it was a huge thing to the Native Americans too, how it was,
private herds. There's some thoughts behind that whole piece because, as you probably know, the buffalo were started to get killed off, I guess, if you lack of a better term, because they were the natives' food supply, and they used the hides and to keep warm and everything else, and they used it in their daily lives, and so the government at that time thought, well, let's decimate their food supply, and that'll take care of what they thought was a problem. And then you had the market hunters that came in, and they would just slaughter them. And then you had the bone pickers, that used that marketed the bones. So yeah, you're right. Private individuals have made it necessary to build those herds back up, and then of course the federal government saw the need for that whole piece. Now there's, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of buffalo back in the in the landscape as such.
Yeah, I think they helped. A lot of ranchers helped with getting that population back up, and all the way back to the Ice Age, the only herd left is that ancient herd in Yellowstone is the only one that I read that goes all the way back to the Ice Age. Same descendants. The rest have been replenished through. So, but yeah, definitely. I wanted to ask if you had ever seen or worked, but
I've obviously seen them, been close to them, but I have not chased a buffalo on horseback. No, I have not been there. I talked to some guys that have, and they simply will say, "Well, we kind of push them the way they want to go."
And they're about what are they? About 2,000? No, probably 1,700 pounds.
At least
of potential really angry.
The bulls are I got to think well over 2,000. Some of those big bulls.
Yeah, they are big animals, and when they decide they're going some direction, they're going that direction.
You often wonder how they can even be fenced in, because you look at some of the fences that surround the herds. If those.
They can jump over 6 feet high.
Yeah, and if those animals wanted to go through a fence, they're just going to go through the fence.
That's right. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this, but we had dairy cattle.
Yep.
I grew up by Medina, And one of the worst types of cattle is a first calf heifer. They absolutely do not want to go where you want them to go. Like, we would always have to get them in the barn, but we had 6-foot panels. Those cows would jump over it, and they'd jump over it, and oh man, they can get pretty angry. I might fear those about as much as a bull. First calf heifer.
Calving first calf heifers out, oftentimes it's their first calf. They have no idea what's happened, and they're confused. They're angry. They'll take you unless you're watching your back pretty good. They won't take that calf sometimes, so you end up with a bottle calf. It's it's one of where your food train starts. It all starts with a first calf heifer.
That's right.
And how do we calf out? Probably 151 one spring first calf heifers. I'll never do that again. It's every 4 hours you're up.
So I know a few of these answers, obviously, because I grew up on a dairy farm. But for those people that are listening, what happens when a cow will not take their calf?
That calf will often end up as a bottle calf, and it would be another chore for someone else to make sure that they get their first milk. That colostrum's got to get down them, and that's liquid antibodies, and that protects them from everything. If they don't have it, they're gonna get sick, and so you get that down them, and then you end up somebody feeding that calf probably every 4 hours until they're get them on full feed on creep feed of some sort. So yeah, it's and if you might end up with 10, 12 bottle calves. So it's a chore. It's going to be a chore for someone.
Right. So when you guys had bottle calves and stuff, did these ranches you worked on, I know that my mom or my parents would have them, people would buy a dairy cow from them to have for this exact reason, so that if you had bottle calves, you had something that was used to getting milked, something that could produce a lot of milk.
You had a nurse cow. Mm-hmm. All right. And that cow would be out, and they would have that, and that cow would take any calf. All right. And so you might have 3 or 4 calves on that cow, or even less, but that you would give that cow. Yeah. That's the reason they would keep a milk cow in their herd for that purpose, to take those as we refer to them as bum calves.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of the ways that I know that we've had, a calf go on to another cow. One way was you skin the dead calf of the cow. That if they lost one, you skin the calf, put that skin on the other cow. Another way that we knew of anyway, that to latch another calf on, was you'd spray the mother with not the mother, but the mother they were trying to take. You'd spray their nose with some perfume. Are there any other ways that you know of other than those two?
It's a time consuming thing. You put them in a chute, all right, and you bring that little baby up there, and you put him in a chute so that cow won't turn on that calf or kick that calf. But over time, while you're going to put that cow in that, you just keep that. Oftentimes you keep that cow in that chute and feed it that way. Water and feed, and then that to give that calf the opportunity, and over time that cow would eventually take that calf. But again, it's all time consuming, and you're doing that with 300-400 cows. It's just
it adds up quick. Every one of them adds up quick.
Time wise, it's tough. Do you lose some calves? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear it in your voice. One of the things that just is very apparent about almost every cattle rancher I've ever met, anybody that's worked on them, is that passion for the cows. When you lose a calf, it's the kind of thing that can make grown men cry. When you lose that calf, you were invested into that calf So I hear that in your voice that you were very passionate about these cattle and the love for for those cattle and the love for doing what you did. What are some of the things, maybe one or two things that you look back on and they were the things you really looked forward to? I mean, of course we talked about it's not all easy. It's not all simple. It's, sometimes it's just a lot of work, but what's one or two things where you just, you could barely sleep the night before potentially, type of things where
Sure.
I was looking forward to this. This is what I love. This is what I live for when I'm out there.
Spring branding. All right. You might, all of a sudden the yard fills up with all the neighbors' horses, and you round up, because the cow-calf pairs, the new calves, and this is generally in June, end of May, first part of June. And so you round up, it'll take sometimes half a day, to round up these cow-calf pairs. And you either round them up and bring them into the yard, or you'll set up portable pens in the corner of a pasture and work it that way. The ropers go in, they'll rope those, and you sort the cows away from the calves. It's very noisy. And so now you have a pen full of all these little babies. And the ropers go in and start roping them out. You'll have some big kids there, hopefully, that can wrestle these calves. And it takes about 20 seconds per calf. That calf is given a shot, generally what's called a 7-way shot, which protects that calf from 7 diseases. You might give an antibiotic shot for anything that looks sick. You brand that calf, and any bull calves are made into steers at that point. And it's a big social event. I mean, you get a lot of food after you're done. It's just, and then the next day you might move on to the next neighbor. One spring I went to 14 different brandings. But you don't see these guys. You might see them at an auction or a funeral. That's it. But they all help each other. And that's the only way you can get it done, because nobody's got help anymore to do a herd like that on your own. We brand on the operation I work on part-time. I branded the other day. Electric branders, in a chute. Mm-hmm.
So we did. But they weren't calves. They were cows, new cows that had come in. And so that's what I did. But in the spring of the year, you look forward to it. And I guess I still get out there in the spring when I can and brand, help brand for a couple of days. And it's all done on horseback. So no four-wheelers.
Yeah.
Madison, have you ever been around for a branding?
I have never, no.
You've never been around it?
I think it would also, to steal one of Adam's questions, what is something you'd want to dispel about this? Because maybe, the city folk listening to this were like, stop that, that's hurting the cow, that kind of stuff. What are some things about farming and, the ranching part that you'd like, the public to know that?
A cow has two levels of hide. All right. So essentially what you're doing is burning the hair off. It's an idea. And most states in the West have brand inspections. You can't sell a cow without it being identified as belonging to you, if I'm selling that animal, I have to show proof that animal belongs to me. So you put your mark on them. You might put an ear tag in their ear with a number in, but over time they will they will lose that tag. They'll rip that tag out of their ear. So you brand them. I don't know. I guess there's two ways of looking at that, but it's you can call it tradition, I guess, but I've never, ever heard of a cow or a calf dying because they've been branded.
I can't think of anything either. And there were plenty of branding going on around our area too. And yeah, it's just such a short thing. You know, it also keeps them safe that they're in your herd. You know, they're in your herd. The reason I asked you about the brand, if you'd ever been a part of branding, is, you know, in our last episode, we were talking about sugar beets.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about the smell of sugar beets, the smell of money.
Oh, so there might be a smell of money at a branding?
Well, I mean, that's a part of it, but smell of branding.
The other day, you know, we had a young guy working with us, and I said, you know, I was running the branding iron. I simply said that I was smelling this for almost 55, 60 years now, and I still can't get used to it. You know, it has its own.
that burning hair. You know, so I don't know if you've ever been at a birthday party where somebody, probably a lady, bends down and goes to blow out the candles, and all of a sudden their hair lights on fire.
Oh,
I've seen clips of that. I've been a part of it one time.
Oh, really?
My older sister, it happened to.
Oh, my.
It was like really quick. It just like burned like 3 chunks of hair up, and it, you know, you couldn't even tell.
But that's the smell.
That's the smell. It's burning hair. It's amazing how that smell. You know, if I smelled that smell, I would know it right away, because we didn't do lots of branding. We didn't have a huge herd or anything, but you're right. That smell of branding, I don't know. I wonder who gets used to it, and I wonder who even likes that. I bet there's some guys that like that smell.
I suppose, you know, it's for some, it's a lot of these guys only do it in the spring if it's a cow-calf herd. But if you are, like, if you're running a feedlot and you're going to move those finished animals, say to a sale barn, Sisseton, they better be branded, because when you get them down there, there's a brand inspector. Those animals, you have to show proof that belongs to you. That animal belongs to you. And so if they don't have a brand on them, or that brand inspector can't read that brand, you may not get paid for a while for that animal.
What I think also, talking about things to dispel of maybe a disconnection between, you know, what people see at the grocery store and the actual animal. You know, some people just think, I mean, I know this is dumb, but some people I've seen have posted online saying, well, yeah, that's all grown at the grocery store. You know what I mean? There's a disconnection there. Especially, you know, when we get to more, you know, big cities, you know, if we're like reaching big and we're hoping we're connecting with people, like people in, say, you know, wherever that is, California, New York, up there, it's not happening at the grocery store. We can tell you that for sure. That's a fact.
Well, you think about, you know, what goes into that animal from birth to, you know, until it does end up in the grocery store, I guess. That's, you know, what you're doing to that animal. You know, these calves are vaccinated just like small children. If they weren't, they're going to get sick and they're going to die. And so, you know, you have a vaccination program. You know, you work what they call working cattle. We might take some horns off some of them. That's not pleasant, because if they come into the sale barn with horns on, you're going to get docked. Mm-hmm. Okay. We pregnancy test stock cows, generally in the fall or winter. Why do you do that? Well, if that cow is not carrying a calf, why do you want to feed it? That calf is your paycheck when you're selling it. And so that open cow, who doesn't have, they call it open, doesn't have a calf, is often going to get sold. It's going to go to the sale barn. Because why feed it? Doesn't have a calf.
Right.
So it's all these little things. We put some antibiotic in them, and there's some caution with that. I guess some people are, you don't put but you run these animals through a chute. They have a tendency to get shocky, and when you work them, they often will get sick on you as a result. So you do some preventive medicine.
Yeah, I think that maybe to take that one step further, I think that one big misconception I think people have is they're like, oh, you shouldn't give your animals antibiotics, or you shouldn't give them vaccinations. Well, you're saying they should die? Like that might be one of those things. I mean, that's probably in my top 10 of things where it's like,
you also have to remember that these cattle are gregarious. They're herd bound. They're together all the time. Nose to nose, tail to tail, tails to nose. Okay. They're going to pick up diseases as a result if they're not vaccinated. Why? Because they are together. Feedlot, same way. They all have their noses in the same trough. So if one is coughing, tomorrow you might have 20 of them coughing.
Yep. So, if you're not on it right away,
yep,
things can spread quick, and that's a huge thing. I mean, I think that so many people out there, they don't realize that this is a livelihood. This is a business. Those business decisions you have to make. That, yeah, do you want to send that cow down to the sale barn that isn't that didn't get pregnant this time? Well, not necessarily, but you know what? It's part of the business of running cattle and ranching. And are there any other things you can think of that, if you got to talk to somebody who had not much familiarity with a farm, with cattle, with ranching, what is there anything else on your mind that you thought you'd like to tell them?
Just to try to explain to them what really goes into it. And I think some, I often will start the conversation like, help is hard to find. Well, it's hard to find anywhere, good help.
Mm-hmm.
And we may start a young guy, and all of a sudden, this is more work than I thought it was going to be. I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. I'd like to be a cowboy, but this isn't like you see, and it's cold, and we're thawing out Richie Waters when it's 20 below, barehanded. And we're doctoring cows, and we're vaccinating when it's 15 below and the wind is blowing and it's snowing horizontally. You don't wait till that. I mean, you get, all these things that happen, but from birth to the end of their life cycle, and before birth to the grocery store, I guess you can call it that. But and you got to take care of your grass too, because grass makes your cattle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you are on the board of trustees at the Cowboy Hall of Fame.
I am.
You obviously have the vest on right now. What is that? For those who have no idea, what is the Cowboy Hall of Fame?
Cowboy Hall of Fame consists of a number of categories throughout the each and every year, and they change the categories from year. There might be 5, there might be 7 categories depending on the year. It's you'll have ranches that will receive that honor. Historic ranches. You'll have pre-1940 rodeo riders. Modern-day rodeo riders would be there'd be a livestock, maybe a famous bull, maybe a famous bucking horse. You'll have an entertainment side of things. I'm trying to think. One of the first inductees in that area were the Tibor brothers out of Hebron. All right, a very good country band. Actually a cowboy cowboy band. There's a difference between country music and cowboy music. But different categories. And the headquarters, as a lot of people know, are located in Medora. And it's a museum, one of the best Western museums in the country. It's been labeled that. That features rodeo, ranching, and Native Americans. All three. And they host right there at that facility. It's a beautiful facility. They will host often weddings and reunions, so they have the facilities to do that. And it's just like any other foundation, trying to raise money. And I've been with that entity for, I think, about 26 years. So, and we put on various events throughout the year. And it's all centered around making some money to keep the Hall of Fame going.
Keep the traditions alive.
Keep the traditions, I guess, if you want to call it that, alive, and keep people aware of what's of what really has gone on historically. Because that whole sector up there is quite a story. With in 1880, 87, 88, the winter of much of the cattle in what we know as of North Dakota now were brought up from Texas, and most of them were longhorns or Corrientes, longhorn cattle, and they were put out on open range. You didn't put up forage in the summer and bring them into the yard and fed all winter. Mm-hmm. They were all out, and the Marquis de Maury had some ideas about having a beef slaughter house and refrigerated cars to go east and all of that, and he tried to start that, and it was a bust. Theodore Roosevelt was involved, but the winter of 88, 87 came in terrible winter, terrible, decimated hundreds of thousands of cattle, and what that did was essentially put a label on things, and the decline of the open range. From that point on, ranchers started to learn how to put up their own hay. Remember the stacks of hay. All right, and I've been involved with that, putting up stacks of hay, moving it into the yards, and then they would round up the cattle in the fall and feed them all winter, and then put them back out on the open range and grass in the summer. But that's what started that whole piece out there, and that was the forerunners of that. And there's generations of people that in those counties out there that are families of those first early ranchers. Yeah. Interesting. This is another piece that I did. I took a class from the legendary Elwyn Robinson, who wrote the history of North Dakota at UND. Just a gentleman's gentleman. And he was at that time writing his history of the Great Plains. And there was about 8 of us in class, just a great class. And what he did, he had each of us write and research and write a segment of his history of the Great Plains.
Wow, in his book?
In his book. And my topic was the decline of the open range. So I researched all of the Badlands Cowboy, which was the newspaper out of Medora at that time, and microfiche, and wrote that chapter for the history of the Great Plains. That's
awesome. Yeah. I want to get that book. I should read it.
Yeah, Owen Rom, of course, he's gone now, but his expertise was the history of North Dakota. It's a good read, really. I mean, it takes you all the way from the prehistoric days to modern times, through the political years, and through the Depression.
So when they would bring those cattle up, they would take them back south again. Then. Is that right?
No, they brought them up because of the expanse of grass.
Okay.
In the western part of North Dakota.
So that's what started the herds up here then?
That's what basically started the herds up here, because there were, and some of the entrepreneurs, they put money together and they brought these cattle up and established these various ranches.
So the cows you see around here were originally Longhorns, or how did it,
it's interesting because you see so many breeds, and there's many different breeds of cattle. Mm-hmm. And I've been involved with Herefords early on to Simmentals, great big growthy cattle, and now basically what you see is black baldies, black whiteface, cattle throughout, so they would call it commercial cattle. There's a number of guys that are seed stock, raised seed stock, which would be registered cattle, and sell them that way. The bull sales, that they have through. And right now there are bull sales going all throughout North Dakota. Or you need some bulls, you go to a bull sale, or you can get one online. Go to a sale online.
Right.
I bet that's crazy too. Had to show up, and now I can just sit at the comfort of my own home and
you bid on them right there, and they'll even they'll deliver the animal.
Yep,
right to you.
Yeah. So how many people a year get inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame?
Oh goodness! Again, it can vary from 5, 6, 7. Again, depending on the year and the categories, because not all of the categories are open every year. They'll change them. They'll rotate them around. Yeah, and we get out to the induction ceremony and meetings. They have it in June out there. It's quite an affair. Have it up at the Jaden Center up by the musical.
Oh sure.
Yeah, where they have the pitchfork fondue. That's where they have it. Yeah. Awesome. We like Medora.
Yeah, Medora is really fun. We've been out there once or twice with our kids now. Spent some time, and we haven't been there a lot with our kids, but
I should tell you, we honeymooned there 50 years ago. Rented some horses from Tescher's in the park, and we camped. We've been out there every year. I think maybe we missed 1 year because of COVID. 1 year for the last 50 years.
How much has it changed?
Oh boy! When we first started to go out there, nothing was open when we got married in June. Nothing was open there. A couple of bars, and that was it. It was still pretty early. For that at that time. The musical itself, of course, used to sit on a wooden bench, wooden plank, and the paths, switchback paths going up.
Yeah. And now it's basically the linchpin of North Dakota tourism, right?
That's it. Yeah, that's what they hang their hat on. Yeah.
All right, I got to hear some of these poems. Right. I want Adam to hear some of these poems.
Well, let's see. What can I get? All right, let's see if I can get through this one without.
And again, how long have you been, reciting these?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. I used to do a poem for Christmas time every year. I just write a Christmas poem, and then it expanded into from there as some of this stuff comes to me. They ask me, and so oftentimes I'll have a pen and pencil or a pencil and a notepad in my pocket, and if I think about something, I'll write it down. Otherwise, I forget it. Now, be mindful that Cowboy Poetry, once again, has rhyme and it has rhythm, but it also tells a story. That story is often shared by the author, the storyteller, or the poet. So, this happens to be in and around Christmas.
Okay.
Don't ask me how many years ago I did this, but now I had been at the Bar PL Ranch for less than a year. It was warm in the house when Eric, the boss man, appeared. And he said, KB, that's me. You're the low man. This task must fall to you. There's a new calf a-missing, and its mother is too. So saddle up, old Sonny, and don't forget your sheep skin. I hate to send you out on this cold Christmas Eve instead of with your kin. But the coyotes are hungry. This year has been hard, and we just can't stand to lose one more little pard. As I rode through the snow and the blustery wind, I complained to myself about the shape I was in tonight. Met family, lots of food and laughs. I'd miss it all thanks to one snotty-nosed calf. Well, my job seemed hopeless, an impossible test, but since I was out here, I'd give it my best. We'd start in the south and work towards the rough. I pointed sunny northwest against the wind and hoped for some luck. We scoured the pastures, the gullies, the hills, but nothing was moving. And then it became quiet and still. We rode down into Iron Springs and up over the draw, and that's when I saw him, and it filled me with awe. Alone in a little clearing, not trying to run, quiet and peaceful, stood mother and son. Slowly, they looked up. Their eyes all aglow. I was reminded of a simple scene long, long ago. Well, my throat got a lump. My eye got a tear. I'm lucky, I thought, to have ended up here. You see, the hardships are many, but the blessings are too. Where my short draw can lead to a soul-searching view. I got off Sonny and knelt in the drifts and said, "Thank you, Lord, for all of the gifts. You see, by myself I ain't much, but I'll do what I can. I've got my own saddle, a horse, a good wife, and I'll ride for your brand."
Boy, that was beautiful.
I love that one. So that's probably my favorite. What do you think, Adam? Huh?
When he said it would have a rhyme and a rhythm,
Yep.
I really have to compliment you, Keith, on the way you read that. Like
it's
the
different.
delivery was.
Do you see how he like switched on almost?
Yeah.
You know, Keith is Keith, and you
Like
know how he is, but there's a different level. He switches on almost when it's time to recite one of these things.
Yeah, I can
That's
see
what
why.
I think the
I
best
can see
part
why
is.
he was a part of Pulpit Supply. Why he's been like, it's just the being an orator through that whole thing. But I think that the message that sends, you know, obviously you said some of that is true, some of that is added into it. But I think that the message of the time long ago, that was the portion that I was like, yeah, you're looking at, you're in Christmas, you have this cow and calf that are reminding you back to what Christmas was all about. You know, that's a beautiful poem.
Do you remember when you came upon that one?
No,
No.
That's been quite a while ago. I have, you know, I do. It really isn't my favorite one.
Well, do you have your favorite one here? Love to hear your favorite one.
Yeah, I would love to hear your favorite one. It's all by memory. That's what Madison was telling me the other day. Is he was like, you know, he has some written down, but a lot of them are.
Yeah. This one's basically true. And I did this one more than once this winter in front of the community choir, you know, and I did it on the radio, the local radio station down there. They called me and did it. It's a Christmas theme as well. My mind begins to wander to them days of long ago. I can still hear the bells of the bobsled when we fed, and feel the cold, cold, wet snow. Now my saddle horse would whinny with breath that I could see as we rode up in them hills to fetch a Christmas tree. Oh, how my little fingers were kept busy stringing popcorn, bows, and berries for that tree. But when it was finished, what a sight to see. I remember our little place down near the lake and think about the sacrifices my folks sure had to make. I remember my mom. I remember my mother preparing special treats and hanging up our stockings she took right off our feet. And dear old Dad making just that one special toy for all the delight and happiness of each girl and boy. I can still smell the roast Mom made us and taste that pumpkin pie with green beans and mashed potatoes piled almost to the sky. I can still hear that Christmas blessing with heads bowed before the meal and think about how special it made us all feel. Because we were taught the real reason why we celebrate. It was a baby born that day. It just weren't chance or fate. And when I hold my grandchildren, though Christmas ain't quite the same, I'll share with them this special story and forever bless his name. Merry Christmas.
Another great one. Another really good one. That one, I remember always hearing this one too. This one really engages your senses almost.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, you feel when he talks about, I mean, probably part of this is just our own experiences. Like you feel that cold on your face. You feel your fingers after you've, I don't think we ever really did the popcorn thing where we stuck them in. I think we might have done it like once or twice, maybe when we were little, as just like a gag thing, because it wasn't really something, in the early 90s that we did much of at that point. But, you feel those things, or, I think that the thing that probably rang the most for me, and this gets back to my own father, where his way of giving gifts was making things. That was one of his ways that he just showed love. Like, I was really into baseball, and so he made us a batting cage.
Oh, really?
Like it's that kind of stuff that, like, when you talk about making those toys, and I'm imagining that was a true piece to your childhood, was that your dad would make you a toy, and I'm sure that was very special at that time, and still special to look back on and say, I'm sure your dad was not lacking in things to do at the time, that he would take that time out to make you that toy, to make Christmas special. I think you appreciate it in the moment, but I think that looking back is when I appreciate those things the most. And yeah.
Well, maybe one last thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, of course, this is up to you guys, but a very, very poignant benediction. May the ruts in the road rise up to meet your pickup. May the sun shine ever so brightly on your lefse. May the rains fall so softly on your lutefisk, and until we meet again, may the good Lord always protect you from unnecessary uftas. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Keep it between the ditches and make good choices.
Well, that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Keath, for coming in and sharing with us, and so many great stories, cowboy poems, and who knows, maybe we'll have you back at some point. And thanks so much for listening. This was the After Hours Ag Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Reich. We got Madison Nelson Gira, and our special guest this time was Keath Borchert and his wife Cindy, sitting in the corner from time to time, adding some color commentary, and we really appreciate you coming in. So
thanks.
Anyway, thank you for that, and let's keep farmers farming, and there's a future in farming. So let's get there together.